All right, welcome inside of the HoopStudy Masterclass. This is episode 11 of season 2. Tonight we have Head Coach Alaura Sharp with us from Presbyterian College, and we are going to be talking about how you can build a better culture within your team. Coach Sharp, welcome. The first question that I have for you is, how did you get here tonight pouring into the HoopStudy community?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. And I think how I got connected was during COVID. I feel like I spoke on a coaches clinic or something like that. And I think you and I emailed each other and we've stayed connected ever since. And I feel like you and I are like-minded in the sense of we love the game and want to have a passion to grow the game. And I have kind of humble beginnings. It was always my dream to be a Division I head coach. And I started as a volunteer assistant way back when at Adams State College, which is now, I think, called Adams State University, but it's a Division II in the RMAC conference. And I made $3,000 my first job. And I worked that for 2 years. And I worked at a steakhouse. I line judged volleyball games. I ran the football concession stand, which I love to cook and all that stuff. And so I'd wake up so early in the morning and brown like pounds and pounds of ground beef. And then I sold these walking tacos. And from what I understand, they're still a hit and they still do them at Adams State. And that all kind of led me to being a head coach at a junior college. And I did that for the next 5 years. I was 1 season at Lamar Community College, and then I was 4 years at Garden City, and then I community college, and then Joy Lee McNellis at University of Southern Mississippi gave me a shot to make my move to the next level. And I became an associate head coach there and then moved on to Louisiana Tech. And I someone reached out to me about the PC job and I had never heard of the school. I mean, our mascot is the Blue Hose, which we have a lot of fun with the mascot. I had to Google the school. I had to Google the conference. I wasn't really familiar with it. I'm from the Midwest. And so that's kind of how I ended up here. Once I started learning about the school, I thought the small school feel and the level of Division I thought was a really great start and great opportunity for me to really get going in my career and being a head coach again.
Yeah, and the Big South is a unique conference as well. It has some good history, a lot of pros coming out of the Big South, both on the men's and the women's side. And I think it's a conference that doesn't get enough appreciation. When I went to Radford University, we went to the NCAA tournament, second time ever, and we played against the national championship Tar Heels. So we were a bad representative that night. They beat us by more than 50. So it was a quick realization that we weren't as good as we thought we were. And that kind of leads me into my next question. When you became, and you can ask, this could be a 2-part question too. When you were a player and when you became a head coach, who was the first team or the first player that just made you realize, like, I'm not ready yet. I got some work I need to put in.
Oh my gosh. I know for sure as a player, and I don't even know who their names were. I mean, I played back before there was social media, so you just didn't really know as much. And we played these twins actually from North Carolina. And I think they were called the Carolina 49ers or something like that was their name. And it was AAU basketball. And there was these 2 twins that were like 6'6" each. And that's before a lot of people were that big playing. And I graduated high school in 2002. And I just remember our team could not hardly get a shot off at the rim. And so definitely humbled and being from a town of about 3,000 people, it was good to get outside of little Southeast Kansas and see what was really out there. But then when I took the job at PC, so my last year when I was at Garden City, we were 29-4. And my first year at PC, we went 7-23. And so that whole season was, me realized, I think as a junior college head coach, it's a little easier to flip a program because when I got the job here, I had no scholarships. The roster was full and the portal wasn't a thing where you could get in it and not have to sit out. And so things were just a little bit different then. And so you get in and you think you can do it and you think, okay, we'll just get to conference and we'll be able to win and do all this stuff. And then you get humbled and you realize that everyone has told you to trust the process and everyone has told you to focus on the process, but you're kind of like thinking that you can get it done. And you realize just how important it is to just start recruiting and focus on the controllables and just start looking at how can you get better and how can you move the needle. I talk about that all the time with our team, just moving the needle a little bit each day. But I've had many a times, I mean, there's great coaches in this conference and we've had some really fun battles. And I agree. I don't think the Big South gets enough credit. And we're actually going and playing University of South Carolina this year. So I'll be excited to play, a top 5 program. And that's something that we haven't had the chance to do since I've been here. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is going to be a lot of fun. And we like to say that as well, even within HoopStudy, to get 1% better every single day. So we have that WIN acronym with that instead of it being an I, being a 1. So this way we use that as something to remind us daily. We have our daily wins, whether that be something like reading 1 chapter a day or, just doing some research on a topic that you're interested in. So you made that transition and you said that you heard about Presbyterian through someone else. So who were some of the people that helped you along the way make that transition from playing into coaching and eventually getting to where you are now?
Yeah, I have to give a lot of credit to my college basketball coach. And I had a really unique college playing experience. I played for 2 years at junior college. The coach that actually signed me to junior college ended up taking another job. And he told me that my NLI blew out the window and I could have gone with them. I ended up sticking to my original commitment. And I played for a first-time head coach. And we didn't train and condition like the next level probably would have. And so I ended up going to Southwest Minnesota State, which was a program where we were ranked my junior year and we had some success. And I was really like, wow, my very first meeting, it was almost like I was a kindergartner learning basketball because of all the vocab. And I just started learning just how a program is ran and he just so many details. And his name is Coach Kruger. And so I played for him my junior year and then he ended up going to another job. And so I played for someone else my senior year. And I think all of that made me want to be a coach because I learned 3 different styles, 3 different coaches. But I just fell in love with Coach Kruger. He believed in me. I was raised by a single mom. And so he really poured into me as a person and taught me how to be a successful young woman. And then he ended up giving my first job. That $3,000 salary came from him. And to this day, I still hire him. He's a consultant for our program. And so he watches every game. He's my truth teller. Any decisions that I make, good and bad, he'll ask me why I did that, and he'll talk about lineups, and it's just nice having someone from the outside looking in, and he just really pours into me, and that's really why I coach, is just because of the investment that not only he made in me, but all of my high school coaches, track coaches, volleyball coaches. I just have been really blessed with those types of people in my life.
So I have 2 things came to mind. And the last one was what you just said. So first question for you is, you had multiple coaches in college, just in your basketball program. How did that affect you as both a person and a player?
I think I didn't really know at the time how crazy that actually is to play for, and even to play for the coach that you didn't sign for. But I think it taught me adaptability. And I think that's a really important life skill, is just to learn how to pivot and maneuver. And, I think from a basketball coach, it just taught me different ways to run a program and what I liked and maybe what I didn't like. And there was something that I've taken away from each one of those coaches that I played for. And honestly, every coach that I've ever worked for too. I mean, I worked for Brooke and Scott Storr at Louisiana Tech, and Joy Lee McNellis. I mean, Joy Lee McNellis has been a head coach for, I think, over 30 years and had a really successful coaching career at Memphis. And when I went and started working for Joy Lee, it was such a well-oiled machine already. And then when I went and worked for Coach Brooke Storr, it was a program takeover. So it really taught me how to take over a new program and what that looked like, because by the time I went to Southern Miss, she'd already been there for about 15 years. And it just already kind of going. So the difference, just every experience is really what you make of it. And like you were talking about wins, it makes me think of something that we talk about in our program. We talk about small wins demolish walls. If you can just chip away at those things, eventually you'll break it down and get where you want to go.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked about, and I'm curious too, because you talked about how you played multiple sports in high school. And I wonder if that helped with your transition with, having multiple coaches in college, because you're used to, working with different styles, even though it's across different sports. So do you think that it was, obviously you went and you became a college athlete, but outside of, just the athletic side, do you think that playing multiple sports helped you grow and develop both on and off of the court?
I think no question about it. I think it helps with burnout. I think it helps with injury prevention either, because you're also, you're just moving different ways. You're challenging your body different ways, and you're not just overusing the same muscles. I did volleyball, basketball, and track. I actually did track at my first 2 years at my junior college. Now I was committed not to do that at my 4 year. I was like, I'm signing at the first place that doesn't have a track team, because I don't want any coach to convince me to run track, because I was over it. But I don't mind when kids specialize, but I'm also intrigued by athletes that play 3 sports and haven't fully committed themselves to basketball, because I see upside and some rawness to their game that I look forward to developing. So I appreciate both.
Yeah, a lot of people, and I've heard Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson speak on this topic as well. You talked about them being a raw athlete. They talk about, like, Darius Miles likes to brag a lot about him being one of those straight out of high school guys. And they talk about those athletes who haven't gone to college, about how they're just raw talent coming into the league, and they're more dangerous because they haven't been groomed as much and put into a box as much as when they go into a college program. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see those athletes. I feel like you said, they're less injury prone because they are more well-rounded athletes. However, I have also seen the other side of it too, where because they are multi-sport athletes, they don't get a rest period. And, that's when we start to see those overuse injuries come into play as well. So talking about your program tonight, we're talking about culture. How do you build those meaningful relationships with your athletes, and not only just them, but with your coaching staff as well?
I think it's so important. I think that, I read this book called Intangibles, and it's about this reporter who goes around. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's about this reporter who goes around and studies baseball cultures and baseball locker rooms. And in the beginning of the book, she talks about the intangible of personal and human connection, and how important human connection is. And it's no secret that the most chemistry oriented teams, coaching staffs, are the most successful teams. That's just the way that it is. And the importance of culture, you just cannot set it aside. And if it's not right, you've got to try to remove those people that aren't culture drivers out of your program. But anyway, in the book, she talks about how this study that was done in an orphanage, and it had these orphan babies that were born back in like the 1940s, 1950s, and how they thought they should raise these orphans was through a sterile environment. So they were in a sterile room, no blankets, no human touch, and the babies started to die. And so anyway, the moral of the research is that we need human connection to thrive and survive. And same thing when you fast forward to elderly people, how people that have been married 60 plus years, if one spouse passes away, the other one at times doesn't thrive. And so anyway, I read that book, and it really hit home to me the importance of just human connection in your program. And I think what that looks like as a head coach is you have to lead by example, and keeping your door open and spending time. It's got to be quality time, and quality time with your staff, outside of the office, not talking basketball, quality one-on-one time. And I think staff is just like players. They want to be coached. Most are former athletes, maybe not at the college level, but most of us played some sort of sport where you're coached and you're driven by feedback and success and meeting goals. And so I think that roles are really important for your coaching staff, responsibilities, giving them projects so that they have ownership. We don't have a ton of budget money here at PC, but we still did our own staff retreat. I made a bunch of food. My staff came over. I had given, a couple of topics, but really we just popcorned around, and we call it spaghetti time, where we throw things against the wall. We see what sticks, and we do spaghetti time in practice too. I'll just draw things on a board. I'll let an assistant draw things. We'll kind of compete against each other, and we'll see what we like. Sometimes we use one of them, sometimes we use none of it. But I think too, just quality time with your players outside of the game. They have to know, you have to know them as a human. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to know, what are you liking about how am I coaching you? I love questions. I love questions in the film room. I love questions in a one-on-one situation. I think just knowing where they come from, knowing what their family structure is like, just knowing them beyond the basketball court. And I think you can coach them as the person first and the basketball player second. And like I said, same thing with your staff. I think giving them honest feedback, and when they do a good job, you got to celebrate them doing a good job. And I just think developing them is so important, and they've got to know that you're invested in them, and that you all are in it together. I can't say enough about just spending time and trying to grow the people that are in the program.
Well, there's a couple of things too that came to mind while you were telling these stories. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard this or not, and it's almost remarkable how similar it is. So when I was in Japan working with HoopStudy Japan, I heard a story. They built a biosphere. It was perfect environment where they had trees that were getting the perfect amount of sunlight. They were getting the perfect amount of water. They had the best soil. Everything was good to go. And after about 2 months, everything started dying. And the scientists were perplexed. They didn't know what was going on. Like, we've literally given them everything that they need. But what they found out was there was no wind. And so there was no resistance. There was nothing that was providing hardship for the plants. And so they just weren't, from a, I guess a poetic standpoint, there was no resistance to provide growth. And so I thought that was really unique. Now, the other thing you were talking about, culture and the intangibles with baseball, if you looked at the Philadelphia Phillies last year, they were able to recruit some of the top baseball players in the game simply because of the culture of Philadelphia. That's why those athletes came and signed there. And so when you build that culture like you have done in Presbyterian, that's a great way to get athletes to come in. And I was also thinking about, you talked about spending quality time with coaches. And I once had a boss who had an open door policy, literally took his door off the door frame. But if you went in to speak to him, he was always busy. And so the fact that you take that time, you have that spaghetti time, which is an awesome thing that you all do. You take that spaghetti time and you value their feedback. That's huge for them. That builds their confidence. I worked at camp with Jay Billis one time, and they were running the ELO drill. And I was watching it, and they were running in transition. I'm sure you've run this drill before. They run in transition with a 3-man weave. One person gets a layup, the other two get shots. And the passes are coming from the baseline. And I said, Jay, look, I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm just curious. You played professionally. You played in college. You played in high school. When's the last time you caught a pass from the baseline running in transition? He was like, never. I said, so why run the drill this way? He said, because this is how I was taught it. I said, well, what if you just put them up on the wing and you had them work on ball handling and then passed it from the wing, almost like you were the trail man and you're just catching it on the swing? And the fact that he stopped camp right then and there and changed the drill meant the world to me. Jay Billis could have looked at me and told me, dude, get the hell out of here. I'm doing this. This is the way we do it. But the fact that he stopped camp, which was the ultimate way to respond, and changed it, that just gave me confidence on a whole different level. And so I think it's extremely valuable that you actually listen to your staff, have that spaghetti time, and you're able to bring in new ideas and make them feel like, and like you said, give them projects and make them feel like they have ownership in what's going on.
And give them credit. Give them credit, give credit where credit is due. Hey, Coach Caleb had a really good idea, da 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 da. I think that's important too, so that I think we don't have all the answers as head coaches, and being vulnerable to your team is really good. I think they have to know that you're a human. Otherwise, there's no way you can connect on their level, especially the older I get. Sometimes I feel like the harder it is to connect. And that's why I think it's important to try to stay involved with social media and YouTube and the things that the TikToks and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not going to be out there doing all these TikTok dances and stuff like that, but just knowing even the trends and just being able to build into conversation and try to get on that level with your player without being their friend. I think you've got to come in and be a mentor and always try to push them and grow them. But there's also a time where you got to just hang. And, I pride myself in having 3 or 4 kids just hanging out in my office. And sometimes it's like, okay, guys, I got work to do. And you got to head on out here. But even our staff, we go on staff walks together, and it's almost turns into a staff meeting or get to know you. And sometimes we'll bring different topics and things on our staff walk, but just spending time outside of the gym and outside of the office, I can't lean on that enough.
So we've got a retreat that you put together. Who cares that you were the cook? Like, I think that's ridiculous that people think that, you can't be that person. Like, I like getting in on my smoker, smoking some salmon, smoking ribs, doing something like that. I did that with my high school team. Like, I think that's a highly underrated thing, because that's also a time where you get to show people who you are outside of basketball. Right. You get to be a little vulnerable too. I tried to smoke a pork butt a couple of weeks ago and it did not work out. But I think, being able to do that spaghetti time, have those retreats. What are some other things that you do, even, with your athletes or, your coaching staff? What are some activities that you have found to be really successful?
So our staff, we love games. We love games. We love jokes. I would love to be a stand-up comedian in another lifetime. I love comedy and comedy clubs and all that kind of stuff. And so one thing that we did this summer was, and part of the thing that we spent all summer on is we were just trying to grow the mental side of the game. And so I was like, okay, how can I come up with a game that's going to be fun, going to make them giggle, laugh, but also accomplish something? So we came up with this game, and I printed off like 100 jokes online. Like, I literally Googled bad dad jokes. No offense to you. And I know your kids are sick and stuff, but we Googled bad dad jokes. And we divided our team up into 2 teams. They said it could cross each other. So if you and I are in the hot seat, I read you a joke. If you don't laugh, you stay in it. You read me a joke. And then the first person that laughs, you get kicked out of the hot seat. The other team gets a point. And so my purpose of that, they laughed, they had a good time, but also it starts to develop some mental side of things where you almost have to remove yourself from where you're at, which is what you've got to do in a really hard conditioning day, right? Because your body's telling you to stop, your body's telling you to not go. And same thing when you want to laugh. But so the first time through, they laughed really easily. Then the second round through, they started taking it more serious and they started trying to be more stone cold. And I thought, man, that's actually really important to just the mental side of the game, where sometimes you got to just remove yourself from where you're at. Same thing when in life, if you're in a hard time, you got to try to remove yourself from it and keep on going. But some other things that we do. So we love games. One thing I like is we'll do in the season when you have your baseline out of bounds, sideline out of bounds, end of game stuff, we'll put conditioning with a whiteboard on the end. So after conditioning, I might choose you, and then you've got to go draw things up so that you're having to think when you're fatigued, being able to communicate and teach when you're tired. Some other things that we've done is we've started doing life skills things. So we have once a week, we have Family Matters, and our Family Matters is always going to be culture driven. And so I kind of pranked our team one day. They thought they had this horrible conditioning thing. And instead, one of our players' cars had broke down. So instead of running them that day, I thought, man, what a great life skill to teach them how to jump a car. And I thought it was important for me to teach them as a female, because the guys, I've got 3 guys on staff, and they're like, Coach, we can do it. I'm like, no, I think it's really important for them to see that women can do those things too. So we taught them how to check their oil. We taught them how to jump their car, only for the kid's car to actually be out of gas, but that's a whole nother story. So, but I think that, and, just being creative to find what works for your team. I mean, we've gone to NBA games. We've, one time we did the slipper slide kickball, which I don't recommend. I was so worried about them getting hurt the whole time, but they did have a blast. It's like you put Dawn soap and slipper slides, and you have pools for bases, and
oh, wow.
They had a lot of fun with it. But like I said, it was really dicey at times.
Yeah, well, I will say it's not just a female thing. I think, and I'm just going to be that old man right now saying it's the younger generation as well. I asked my brother, I was like, "Hey man, do you know how to change a tire?" He's 13 years younger than me. And if he listens to this, he's going to be bitter, but he was like, "No, I don't know how to change a tire. I don't need to know how to do that. I got AAA." I'm like, "Bro, what? Come on, man." But I'm going to put you on the spot here right now. So, first question, funniest TV show?
I'm a Family Guy person. I own every DVD still. I love Family Guy.
Family Guy is where it's at. I was looking for The Office. Favorite funny movie?
Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber. That's a classic. You know what my favorite funny movie is, that the first time I watched it, I must have been in the worst mood ever, is Superbad. The first time I watched it, I thought it was the dumbest movie on the planet. Now I can't help but cry laughing every time I watch it. Last thing, give us a corny joke.
Oh my gosh. All right. Why do you not play poker in the jungle?
Because of all the cheetahs.
Because there's too many cheetahs.
Oh, yeah. I got a good one for you. What do you call a sleepwalking nun?
Don't know.
A Roman Catholic.
Oh, I love it.
That's a great one. You gotta put that one in your bag. That's probably my favorite one.
There's 2 things that we keep in the office. We keep a thing of jokes, and then we keep topic cards. So you can buy these topic things on Amazon, and it's just like, it's random stuff. So it might say, what's your biggest fear, or just little kind of fun questions. And so sometimes the kids will be sitting around the coach's office, and I'll hear them kind of playing that game, and I like to go in and get involved. Just fun stuff.
Well, let's flip the script here. So we've heard some great things so far. You talked about, like you just said, grabbing those topic cards. I've actually heard that's really good too for family nights as well. Because a lot of families, when, there's 2 things that you're doing when you sit down for dinner. One, obviously get that good nutrition in you, but the other part of that is actually catching up with your family, finding out about their day, and actually making that, reconnecting as a family. So I love the fact that you do that as well with the topic cards. But give us an example of something where you walked into it and you're like, oh man, this is going to be the best activity, and it just crashed. Like, it was the worst idea possible.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know the answer to that question. I feel like I've had a lot of fails before. Something else really fun that we did last week was song association. We did it with some recruits, but that was really, really fun. It's kind of like a finish the lyric type of game. I can't think of anything off the top of and it's not because I've been successful in all of our culture stuff. I might think of something here, but off the spot, I can't think of anything.
Repressed memories right there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's no big deal. So give us, we're going into the preseason right now. Your girls just got back to school. You just started.
I do have one.
Okay, here we go. What do you got for us?
So my first year, the 7-win season, which we lost 12 games in a row. I've never experienced that before. I'd always kind of been in winning programs. And so anyway, we're going into the tournament, and I think we're the 9 seed or something like that. We're playing the 8 seed, and we make these t-shirts, and they wore them for shoot around. And so these t-shirts were like, they put the teams that we were going to face and then check marks. So it was going to be, all right, we beat this team, we're going to check it off. And they had put kind of some stuff from the team. They had really spent a lot of times decorating them. And we washed them after shoot around. We won, and we washed them after shoot around. And then we go into the next game and they're blank. Everything washed off of them. So
Oh my
that's
gosh.
definitely a culture fail.
That's funny. That's funny. So you're getting ready to start up right now. It's preseason. Girls just got back to school. Those freshmen that are coming in, how do you make them feel welcomed on campus? Because that can be an intimidating time, coming to college for the very first time and being away from people.
I think so. We just have one freshman. So how much more intimidating is it to just have
Right.
one freshman, and we're not slowing down to teach? She's having to really be adaptable, and we're utilizing that's probably one of the best things that we've done is we've used our own players to teach things, or we've used our own players to answer the why. I'm really big on explaining why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, you're probably getting that from your young kids, right? You say
Right.
something and everything is why. It's just a part of learning and developing. And so I think that's one thing that we've done a good job of. But we try to welcome all of them in. We put their gear, instead of just putting their gear in their locker, we wrap it up in a bag and make it like a gift bag. We put snacks and water, and we write personal notes from our coaching staff, and we stick them in there. I've also made, have you guys ever seen those lunchbox notes that you can buy at like CVS or Walmart? And
Yep.
I'll write on those. Some of them are too cheesy to use, but some of them are really good. And you write little notes and put it in their shoe or put it in their locker, and have the team show them around campus, walk them to their classes the night before their first class so that they know where they're going, they know where they're supposed to be. We do that more in the summertime because we do have the opportunity to bring them here in the summer when campus isn't as busy and they get to kind of figure things out. But we have a term in our program too, we call FITFO, figure it the out.
Yep.
And so we operate, not that we don't allow questions, we do, but I just think sometimes kids are wanting the right answer. And there's so many times in basketball, you got to just figure it out. When do I rotate? Well, I can give you that answer, but you also just got to kind of go off your instinct. And if you go, then we got to figure it out as a group. And so teaching our freshmen just how to FITFO and figure things out and ask questions and not be afraid to ask their teammates and lean on their teammates, I think is really important.
Yeah. And I love that too. One of the things that we used to do if we were running sets, we would have you have your main group on, and then we have our backups. And if anybody messed up, we always expected the people who were standing on the sideline to correct them instead of the coaching staff to do it. Because I knew that if you as an athlete can correct another athlete, one, it allows you a voice. And two, now I know you're actually paying attention. You know what's going on. And so we would also stop practice from time to time if somebody did mess up and nobody said anything, and it was just like it was an obvious teaching moment, then we could get back to that and say, hey, listen, everybody has a voice here, make sure you're speaking up, right? So it gives them that opportunity again to have that ownership with what's going on.
And I think that's how you teach leadership is you might stop a play and say, okay, what did we like about that? And then you hear, are they speaking your language? Do they even know what we want that possession to look like offensively or defensively? And then it's like, hey, what did you not like about that possession? Same thing. I might show 3 possessions of offense in the film room, and I might say, all right, tell me what you think about those. And they're like, well, we didn't do this and we didn't do that and we didn't do that. And I'm like, those are the 3 best possessions we had in the game. So you've got to know, do they even know what a good possession looks like? So you start learning some of that stuff. How we even take leadership to another level is practice might be finished and I might put you on the spot and say, all right, tell me what Chris did well today. All right, tell me what so-and-so needs to do a better job of. Are they living our standards, and really forcing them to be on the spot to start having hard conversations. We call it carefrontation instead of confrontation. You care so much about someone, you're willing to kind of be a truth teller to them. But I think we don't do captains. I want everyone to have a platform to learn how to lead and hold each other accountable.
So you just mentioned actually being able to, have that confrontation. what's that language look like? Like, what's that look like? Do you all just do that after practice? Do you do that, do they get to a point to where they're communicating like that on a regular basis?
Yeah, sometimes I'll plant the seed. A lot of times if kids haven't been in my office, I'll set up a time and spend time or go have coffee with them or something like that. So sometimes I'll plant the seed and I'll have a conversation with them. Who are you really proud of? Who do you think's doing a really good job? Have you recognized that? Can you find a time in practice to really recognize just the effort or the competitiveness of certain players? And, if I'm with maybe an older player and I'll say, who are you kind of bummed about? Who do you feel like's kind of holding us back or being the kind of crab that's bringing us back down? And okay, what could that look like? How could we address that? So almost like you have a dry run so that they're comfortable. And then it's like, okay, I can really kind of teach them in a private setting of, let's make sure we have eye contact. Let's make sure your tone of voice is really good. And we always teach our kids too to have a response. The response needs to be, I got you. If they're ever challenged by a teammate, I got you. So that way there's no eye roll, there's no frustration. There's just an automatic response for the I got you. And they kind of naturally will probably already do that. But one thing that our confidence coach teaches us is she teaches us to communicate in night. And it's, name, information, tone of voice, and ears, listening or whatever. So that's something that we try to blend into our program.
That's awesome. The fact that you guys have a confidence coach, like, that's insane. That the fact, like, the level of detail, you talked about that with one of your former head coaches, the level of detail, the terminology that you had to learn, the level of detail that you put in to actually building this, your culture within your program is amazing. I mean, there's no other word that I can think of right now, because I feel like there's so many programs who get so highly focused, hyper focused on the X's and O's and player development. And I'm sure you all fit that in as well. I'm sure that's a, staple in your program as well. How do you balance all of that out between, the culture, the X's and O's, the player development, the classroom, everything that's going on?
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge for kids when they come into college is time management, and your day is pretty much set for you. And we challenge our kids to, I after a game, I'll probably have 7 or 8 text messages of kids, whether we win or lose, wanting to watch film with me. I mean, player development is a staple in our program. We haven't necessarily started organized basketball court workouts. And I had 4 players ask me today to do an extra workout, and constantly our team and players are in the gym. But you need to put time into what is important to you as a coach. And actually, so I told you that I had to Google Presbyterian College. So someone that works for a recruiting software, him and I had met. He had worked with me at Southern Miss, and he's the person that someone reached out to his boss and gave him my name. It was just a really crazy thing of how they even got my name and even knew to call me at Louisiana Tech. But I get on the elliptical the next day after that guy had called me to see if it was okay for him to give my name. And I was like, sure, but I still didn't really know. And so I'm on the elliptical, I'm watching YouTube, and Tim Corbin, who's the baseball coach at Vanderbilt, is talking about culture, and he's talking about his locker room, and they have a fall cleaning day and all these things. Well, guess where he got his career start? Presbyterian College, which is crazy.
Oh, wow.
And so I was kind of like, it's really meant to be from that moment on. But what I learned from his YouTube presentation was he talks about, he spends time on character development every single day. The first 20 minutes of every practice is character development. And so I've just invested time in it. So once a week, we have what I think I mentioned it earlier, we have Family Matters. And if I don't schedule it in, and it's not all about team building and doing team activities, sometimes it's just discussing topics that are going on in the world. Next week, they're going to be meeting with a financial advisor. We might do something with our confidence coach. I might just take them to breakfast or cook something for them. It's always going to be different, but it's always going to be something that develops them as a human or a person. It's never going to be basketball related.
That's awesome. That's everything that you want out of a coach, someone who's looking out for you and putting your interest first, right? Like, it's not always going to be X's and O's, but when it does come down to that, you spoke earlier about, being in the film room and making sure that they know what a good play looks like. what's the culture like with your team when it comes to film? Do they study film on a regular basis? Are they happy to go to film? How long are you all sitting in film? That's a ringer question too, because I'm interested to hear how long you're in there, because I've heard some varying answers over the years.
Yeah, I like short to the point everything. Practice, everything. I like to post the practice plan. I like for everybody to know what they're getting into. I don't like the same practice every day. I don't like the same. I like for there to be some catching them off guard so that there is some unknown that they've got to figure out and adapt to. But I also like to be able to just call it a drill, they get into it, and it practice moves really, really quickly. But in the film room, after a game, I'm always going to have the same approach, whether we win by 40, we win by 1, we lose by 30, whatever it is. It's the same approach every single film day. And we're going to give feedback on what did we do well from a culture standpoint? What do we need to get better at before our next game in a culture standpoint? What did we do well offensively? What do we need to get better at? And then defensively, the same thing. What did we do well? What did we get better at? And I think just consistency in your messaging and just keeping yourself process focused. And if you win a game, celebrate the win. You don't know when the next one is going to come. You don't know what's going to happen. You just don't know. And so I know some people are like, you got to normalize winning. I think there's a real fine balance between normalizing winning and celebrating winning. And you've got to find that balance for you. But I believe in short film sessions. I'll usually have a certain amount of, I'll usually try to pick, all right, it's going to be all about offense today, something that we're going to focus on in practice that day, or it's defense oriented. If we have a quick turnaround, I'll try to pick 5 clips on offense, 5 clips on defense, and then maybe 5 winning moments or something that I think belongs with our culture, because you have to celebrate. And I think this on your staff too. You need to define roles for your team, and you need to define roles with your staff. I already kind of talked about that, but you need to celebrate roles. And the hardest role on a team isn't the person that has to score the most points for us to win. It's not me as the head coach. The hardest, most selfless role are the bench players that are sitting in their shooting shirts when the buzzer goes off, and they worked just as hard and did everything. So we have what we call the bench mob. And we showed them clips of Monmouth men's basketball before the season last year. And so then it created this thing. And then we show clips always. We print off pictures and we put them in our locker room, and we really celebrate and make a really big deal about the bench mob. And then what that evolved to was when we finish pregame meal, and the players that probably are going to play a majority of minutes, they go get taped, they go get showered, they go get ready. The bench mob sits in there and practices their bench mob things. They'll do like a fake CPR. They'll do like the bicycle thing. And to me, that really told me our culture is really shaping up, because you're starting to have really selfless things and buy-in from the roles that aren't quite as pretty on the bench.
I love that. I love the bench mob idea. And I feel like those people too can inject energy into the game, especially if it is one of those games where it is a really tight game, it's close, and you might be exhausted because at this rate, you've already played 32 minutes, and you need something else, and you're not always getting it from the fan base, especially in conferences like the Big South. The year that we won the Big South, I think our max attendance was in the championship game for the Big South, and that was the first time we had sold out, and it was the best record that we had to date in the program, which is crazy. So I mean, having the bench mob in a Big South conference, that's huge. They bring the energy, they're bringing the juice every single night. That's awesome. Gene Simpson asks, can you share your thoughts on the current state of women's basketball?
Yeah, I think women's basketball is really headed in the right direction. I'm really excited. I mean, we had the most viewership. We've headlines are women's basketball. There's people were gaining a lot of fans in the women's basketball world. I mean, I had the opportunity. One of my really good friends is an assistant coach at Virginia Tech. So I was fortunate enough to be able to be at the South Carolina, Iowa game, and then the Virginia Tech LSU game, and see those amazing games in a sold out facility, and just where the game has gone. And I think I've been in women's basketball at the college level since 2006. and just where it was and where it is now is something that I'm really proud of. And, we celebrated all the Title IX stuff last year, but there still is a long way to go in women's basketball, from budgets to resources. There still is a little bit of a gap if you compare us to men's basketball, but I feel like we're not sitting in and idling in that. We're still finding ways to grow our game. And NIL has been really good for not just women's basketball, but NIL has been really good for women's athletics. And I'm sure that it has some downside. If you're coaching some of those kids, they're not maybe working out and doing as much in the summer as they did before, because they're traveling and they're going places and they have speaking engagements and they're making lots of money. And hopefully there's people in their lives that are helping them manage that. But I'm really excited about the game of women's basketball, and I'm proud of where we're at and hopefully where we continue to go. What my one fear is when the COVID year ends. So this is the last year for the extra COVID year and all the grad transfers. I think that has really kind of evened out some of the competitiveness and allowed for some programs to get 1-year transfers in that played 4 years somewhere else. So I'm hoping that it still stays competitive and there's not a 77 game win streak like we've had with UConn and Tennessee and even Louisiana Tech back in the day. So I'm hoping that it stays competitive.
Yeah. With Oliver Odell right now, he asks, what's something that maybe has backfired on you in the past regards to culture development?
I think something that's really hard, that's backfired on me a lot, is the conversation around shot selection. I think that's really hard. I think it's really hard to balance confidence and ability and player development. Someone might be working really, really hard on their shot, but even on a good day and a good game, they're still going to shoot in the 20%. And they don't get to shoot 6 times like the person who's shooting 34% from 3. And I think that a lot of times I've tried to just have those conversations in the film room, and to me that backfires. I think everyone's got to be on the same page. One thing that we started doing last year with shot selection from because it's a culture thing, right? Everyone's got to get bought into shot selection, is we started grading our shots. So we had 11 new players last year out of 13. So we had 2 returners. I had an entire new coaching staff. It was just a complete kind of total program turnaround. And we ended up leading the conference in assists and scoring. And so some really cool things eventually came from all of this. But in the beginning, it was ugly. It was gross. It was hard. It was these players were the leading scorer at their junior college or their high school. So anytime the game was on the line, we started playing one-on-one and taking all these shots that weren't us and weren't going to help us be successful. And we played at University of Minnesota and we played at St. Thomas University, which are both in the Minneapolis area. And we didn't score over 40 points either game. And I'm just kind of on the way home. I'm like, man, I don't know if we're going to be very good. You know how you do the spiral. Yeah. And I snapped myself back, because when I really started studying our film, I realized that we were taking really, really impossible shots. And so that made me start grading our shots. So we grade them ABC. And C is contested, someone else is open, and off balance, or one of those 3 things. A B, and sometimes you have to take a C. In a game situation, you might have to throw something up. I mean, there's a time and a place for a C shot. A B shot is contested. You might be balanced, or a B shot is an open 3 by a not a very good shooter too early in the shot clock. That could potentially be a B. An A is a good shot for you, and you're balanced and you're open. And there is obviously, rules are made to be broken. Sometimes post players will take Bs and can still make them at 55%. So then we'll start labeling those as A shots. So it's just a way you can't argue stats. So that's why I think when you're defining culture, you can talk all this game, but you've got to be able to back some of the stuff up with some stats and some analytics that can have your back in certain times when you're having playing time discussions or shot selection discussions.
Yeah, Coach Surenkamp last week mentioned that when he was a video coordinator with the Hornets, they really valued his opinion. Basically exactly what you were saying with your coaching staff. When Coach Borrego would call him in, they told him, when you are called on, make sure that what you have to say, you have evidence to back it up with, right? And I think that is such a slippery slope when it comes to athletes when you're talking about shot selection. Because if you're coming in opinion-based, like in an opinionated comment, it can quickly turn into, oh, well, they just don't like me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you can't articulate exactly why that's not the best shot for them to take, then you probably shouldn't say something just yet. You
Yeah.
should probably just take a little bit more time to think about it because, like, we talked about here, that can backfire very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think, too, just showing them clips of this is an A. This is an A. We drove it. We drew the help. We kicked it out. They scrambled. We hit the one more. We had a wide open feet set, good shot, good shooter, and it goes in. And explaining to them, we're going to make those 4 out of 10. The shot we just took, we might make it 1 out of 10 times. So if you were a betting person, what are you going to bet on? If you had to pick your teammate and it was a 2-on-2 and you had to win it for $1 million, which shot are you going to pick? I think we've all seen that on social media, like $50 for the layup, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Take the high percentage shot if it were me.
No, for sure. So have you ever had a player that was detrimental to the team's culture? And if so, how did you address or try to steer them in the right direction?
Yeah. I think, if someone has a character flaw, I think it's really hard. Character flaws to me are really selfish, make poor decisions off the court, theft or breaking the law, things like that. I tell every player, when you do things in our program, whether you have a bad attitude or you don't make a sprint time or you're maybe, talking bad about a teammate, we can deal with all those stuff. But if something happens and you're breaking conduct across campus or you're breaking the law, when things are out of my hand, then I'm forced to make really hard decisions in the program. And so that's kind of how I label it up front to try to keep as much in the program as possible. Obviously, sometimes it does get to a point where you do have to remove players from the program, but I think relationship first. You have to try to break down a wall. You have to try to build some sort of common ground so that they even listen to you to try to drip them the other way. But I also think about Sue Inquist, who she talks about, she looked at her team, UCLA softball coach. She looked at her team in thirds, top third, middle third, bottom third. And if you focus too much on your bottom third, then your middle third becomes your bottom third. If you go home every day talking about the bottom third, their parents are calling you, they're complaining, they're posting on social media, put in so-and-so or whatever it is. Some of it, there again, I love the word balance, but just balancing, when do you need to come down on it? When do you need to punish it? And, when do you need to just move on from that player? Or when do you just need to put your focus somewhere else? I think that's where your staff comes in. And sometimes I'll say, am I off on this? Am I putting too much energy in this? Is it really not that big of a deal? And your staff can't just agree with you. They need to actually think about the question so that they can help re-steer you if you need to, because we've all coached those players who just bug. They bug. And you can't really put your finger on it. They just bug. Something about them. You never feel like they're all the way bought in. Those players usually are harmless. You got to just get over it.
No, for sure. And you said that you love the word balance. And one of the words that I love that you used earlier was standards, because I think standards are huge, where rules are meant to push people down, knock them down, say, no, you have to do this. I feel like standards give you the idea that you can live up to these things. What do standards mean to you? What does that look like in your program?
I'm glad you asked. We actually just did that today. We did this activity, standards over expectations. So expectations are outcome-based things. And I had them raise their hand, what are different types of who gives expectations? They said themselves, they said me, they said our coaching staff, that some of them said their parents. And so then we had a big giant whiteboard and we had them write any expectations for the team. So it was, energy, effort, good teammate. They put in some defensive efficiency stuff. They put in after timeout, win it, force the first timeout, win the conference. They put all of these expectations. Then I had each one go around and write up. I actually had a coach up there writing everything, but then each person went around and what is the expectation of you? So basically they put their role up on the board. And then I asked them how much of those things are 100% in your control. So then we started marking out all of the things that weren't 100% in your control. Then we start realizing, okay, these are our standards. These are our expectations. Expectations are pressure traps. And if you're focused all the time, like right now, there's some pressure. There's some talk about us winning the conference. We'll probably be picked maybe one or two when the preseason polls come out. But you can't focus on winning a championship. You got to focus on being a champion every single day. And it's so important in everything that we do to do that. And so when it came down to it, and we got everything knocked out, and then we started circling. So then I said, okay, what does a standard look like? So then they started talking about communication. Then they were circling in the same color everything that went with communication. And so after having an entire board full of rules, we got ourselves down to 3 standards that they created, that they have buy-in to. And then we labeled 2 leaders for each standard. So I said, okay, who's our best communicators? So then 2 kids raised their hand. I'm like, all right, you guys are in charge every day of our communication. And then it was growth mindset was 1 standard, which, then they talked about all the things that mindset, no pouting, no complaining, everything that kind of goes with the mental side of the game. Communication, they talked about being a great teammate. They talked about leadership. All of that goes in the communication standard. And then energy and effort was the other standard. So we went from probably 100 things on the board down to 3 standards that we're going to live by and hang our hat on every day.
And I love the fact that you all quantify it as well, right? Like, if I'm not mistaken, you do an activity called Culture Season or Culture Queen. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we did that a couple of years ago. It was really fun. I'm glad you brought that up. But so yeah, we did Culture Season, and we did it in the off season where there's a blank slate for roles and everyone can kind of just focus on their personal development. We brought in our strength coach. We figured out a grading system. If I remember, a 3-2-1, a 3 was a 3%er. If you got a grade of a 3%, so it's above and beyond human nature. It's above and beyond the regular standard of the program. Maybe you got in a bunch of extra workouts. You were really, really sharp that day. Maybe you even shot it really well. You performed like a pro, whatever it was, and you would get 3 points plus a t-shirt. And then if you were a 2, you were at the standard. We called that the hard hat. And so you would get a 2 for that workout, and we would meet with our strength coach. So they had to be the same score in both, on the court and in the weight room or conditioning, whatever we were doing. We kind of graded everything. And then a 1 was below the line. So we were capturing below the line behavior, which was culture stuff, being on time. If you're late or if you miss class or we got a bad progress report, you were knocked out of the culture queen for that week. And then we would get our top 3 scores for the week, and they would do a challenge at the end of the week, whether it was a plank hold or a bar hang or something like that. And then if they won that challenge, then they were named the culture queen for the week. And we bought this crown on Amazon and made a really big deal and made a hype video afterwards. And so I would always find a song like, when they crown Miss America or Miss Congeniality, when they crown, or there's these. So we found like fun little songs that kind of went with what we were doing.
That's what's up. Shout out to Amazon, always coming through in the always can find something there. Like just like, I need some ice cream scoop from my house, and then it's there the next day.
All the time.
So with you talking about competition and things of that nature, is there anything in the program that you all do outside of, you did the Culture Season where you all are competing with each other to, like a fun competition to kind of help promote growth?
We actually, this summer, we did the Olympics. So it was kind of 2-part, I guess. The first 3 weeks, so we had a 4-week summer session. The first 3 weeks, every single workout, again, I think I talked about, we're working on our mental growth. So we did a mental challenge for each and every workout that we had. And so we also have established some mental training into our warm-up. And so what they're trying to work on is just how to talk to themselves instead of listening to themselves. We're not very good when things get really hard physically and we get really quiet. We start to shut down. We start to maybe make excuses and cower away. And so that's what we're trying to really lean into. And so after each workout, we started doing mental challenges, and it was just stuff really, really hard that they had to get through as a team. So one one day we did a 3-minute plank and they failed and they failed and they failed, and we never got it. A week later, I went back to that challenge and they got it on the first try and they celebrated. It was like we won the championship. We did bar hang, we did wall sits, and I gave them just really hard stuff that they had to mentally get through. And, I tell them too, like, I want to create the hardest practices in the safest environment. Like, normalize failure. It's a part of our game. And we have a mistake response that you need to have drills that make your team fail so that they realize what it feels like to fail and how to move on from a turnover or a missed shot or something like that. So normalizing failure was kind of like our first 3 weeks, the mental side of the game. And then in the last week, then we established the Olympics. So I scored different drills, like our mile run, instead of rewarding the person with the fastest mile time, because basketball isn't always about the best runner, right? It's the best basketball player, the toughest person. So instead of doing that, and bronze was 3 points, silver was 2 points. I mean, I'm sorry, gold was 3, silver was 2, bronze was 1. And it was whoever their mile time was better, the most improved mile time over the course of the summer. So that's one thing that we did. We did shooting, we did weightlifting, I tried to do a little bit of everything that we had done. And then that led us to 3 finalists. And then we had our Olympics. So that's how they qualified for the Olympics. And then we had our Olympics. We had a ceremony. We played the national anthem. We brought out, the weight jump boxes are different sizes. We awarded the medals. Amazon, I bought these cheap medals. And so that's something that we did this summer that was pretty fun.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this, because I don't want to hold you up too much. If there's one activity that you haven't mentioned yet, if there's one activity that you think that anybody could install into their program starting this preseason, what's one thing that you would suggest that they consider adding in?
I think I kind of talked about it. I think drills that teach mindset and drills that force failure. Jerome Tang, the men's coach at Kansas State, which is where my dad played football. So I was kind of raised to bleed purple. And Jerome, he does a drill that he calls knockout shooting. And he does it to kind of see if your team's ready to go and if they're communicating and just have they transitioned from the classroom to the court. I've kind of remodeled it so it's a pressure drill. And so what it is it's knockout shooting. So it's 4 minutes, it's 30 makes mid-range and then 30 makes from the 3-point line. And, we want from the 3-point line, we want 34% or higher or whatever. And so if you miss 3 shots in a row, you're knocked out. You have to go stand on the baseline, rebound and cheer for your teammates. But it's 2 lines on a side, 4 balls. I know we all do the drill. Or you cut, you pass, you shoot, you cut, you pass, you shoot. You have to name call. But if you're not talking, you get kicked out. If you're not loud enough, you're kicked out. So there's other culture things that we require in the drill besides just making the shot. Like, we really talk a lot about name call, because if I'm in traffic and someone screams out my name, it gets my attention, right? So it gets your attention. It helps you make the easier read than the person with the ball in their hand. So communication is like, one of the standards. So we got to teach it, drill it, all that. So then if you miss 3 in a row, you have to get on the baseline. Well, then it might help with shot selection. Hey, you've been on the baseline every day and knockout shooting, and you keep wanting me to give you more shots, but why don't you try staying and knockout shooting, right? But where we put the pressure trap in it is our coaches each have a group of players. And so if someone's missed 2 in a row, they're trying to really force pressure. Hey, you've missed 2, you got to hit this, and trying to create and add pressure. And then what our confidence coach talks to us about is when you start feeling pressure, you should focus on your big toe. Just focus on something completely, not having anything to do with the game-winning free throws or the shot that you've missed or whatever, to try to teach them pressure and when they feel like the world is on their shoulders. So I love that drill. And I think that there's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, I do eraser drills where if we're struggling with our defensive rebounding, that no matter the score, if you give up an offensive rebound, it erases your team's score. So that way, it doesn't matter how lopsided the score gets, there's always a chance for your team to win. You just got to get an offensive rebound. But scoring things, I think the in a row shooting stuff is really good to simulate pressure.
I love that. So, and obviously you have, you are defining Masterclass right now. You are giving us, gold nugget after gold nugget. How do you continue to grow? How do you continue to learn on a regular basis?
Well, I love it. It's my passion. I want to be really good at this. So I think it starts with just your drive, and even on your staff, trying to spread your drive and your passion for learning. I can't stand know-it-all coaches, people that don't change, people that don't adapt, that do things because they've done it for 20 years. I mean, we all could be like that. But I think just the first thing that I do is I look at what are the gaps of our team and where do we need to grow? And then I'll spend the summer studying that specific thing. Last summer, we really had struggled offensively on the court. And so I made some changes to our transition offense. I made changes to our offense. I got the staff on the same page. They were involved in those changes. And I mean, we were one of the best offensive teams in the conference. Now, we suffered a little bit defensively. So this summer, we just haven't guarded the ball very well. Our closeouts aren't very good. So I picked out some coaches that I knew that have really good defensive things going on. And my staff and we Zoomed with over the summer. We studied our own defense. I gave projects to my assistants. They broke things down. We all brought feedback and just learn and grow. I think we always should be studying the mind, and we always should be studying culture and mindset and the sports psychology side of things, because I just think that giving your players all of the tools to be successful after basketball is really important, and what an opportunity that we have to try to drip into them every day in the mindset, so they can hopefully go and be successful professionals and parents or family members or, wives, husbands, whatever it is.
Absolutely. So you gave us one resource earlier, and that was Intangibles. That's a book that we can read. Do you have another favorite, resource that, you read it, you saw it somewhere, you talked to somebody, and you're like, this is one of the best things I've ever heard?
Well, I think a couple of things come to mind. One, there's a book called Insight. I think number one predictor of success are people that are self-aware. It kind of goes to the people that want to, look themselves in the mirror, hold themselves accountable. But Tasha Eurich, it's Eurich. She wrote a book called Insight. And there's actually resources that you can take quizzes to see how self-aware you actually are. I've done that with staff. I've done that with myself. And it keeps in the back of your mind, just, something that helps hold yourself accountable to, the awareness of you. And I think having someone in your life that can pour into you. I meet with our SWA, who's now our athletic director, every year, and I want her to try to tell me what I'm good at and tell me what I'm not good at and try to grow me. But having people in your life that can talk to you and help coach you, because at one point we were all being coached, and I think it just helps you be a learner. I know Coach Kruger always says I'm the only assistant that ever worked for him that ever came to him and said, how can I get better? I want to get better. I want to be really good. So I think that's why I started with the drive and the hunger to be really good. But I think that leading that way helps your players want to be like that too, because I tell them, I'm really honest with them, I want to be the best to do this. And I hope that you want to be the best to do this too. We're trying to align ourselves to do things that this program's never done. I mean, there's so many things our program's never done. I mean, it's crazy that a fourth place finish is one of the best. Right. We've never been to the NCAA tournament. There's just so many things that we've never won a conference championship. So I think when you're trying to do things that are really, really hard, you've got to just be vulnerable and self-aware and put yourself out there.
Yeah, well, I think you're well on your way to, rewriting the history books there at Presbyterian. If people want to follow you and see some of the things that you have coming up, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably social media. I'm going into year 6. We have a really good staff that is doing a really good job putting stuff out on social media, but I'm Twitter and Instagram. I'm Coach A Sharp. But I mean, I'd love to invite anyone to practices. I mean, anyone can come on campus. I'd love to sit down and have coffee, whatever. I want to grow the game just like you do. And I so appreciate your platform and our relationship that we've, grown into. And it's just, It was one email that you sent a long time ago, and how brave of you. And I'm glad I responded, and I try to do that and to stay investing in people that want to grow and do great things for our game.
No, we really appreciate that. And the last question, and this one is the same for everybody. If you could have anyone come on HoopStudy, who would it be? And remember, you have to help us get them on here.
I know exactly who I'm going to recommend. It's someone that I haven't mentioned, even though I've stolen a million things from him. And he really poured into me and helped me through that first year when I was at Presbyterian College. As he was our men's coach. He's now the men's coach at Appalachian State, Dustin Kearns. He's awesome. He thinks outside the box. I can't say enough great things about him. I go watch his practice every year just because I love what he does, how he does it. He's doing awesome things there. I mean, he took him to the tournament his first year that he was there and did awesome things here when he was at PC too.
You heard it, Coach Kearns coming soon. Make sure you all are tuning in. Coach Sharp, we really appreciate you pouring into us tonight. This masterclass has been just that. It's been masterful. The amount of knowledge that you've given us in a short amount of time, we greatly appreciate it. And we're looking forward to seeing you all reach that NCAA tournament and continue to grow on a daily basis.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.